Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Royal Watcher podcast. Before we start today's discussion on the Royal Jewels in season 5 of The Crown, we are really excited to announce that the Royal Watcher podcast is now on YouTube. So go and subscribe to our YouTube channel, also called the Royal Watcher podcast, where you can see a visual representation of everything that we're talking about. My name is Saad Salman. I am the fan writer of The Royal Watcher, a royal commentator, and a royal contributor for Elle.com.
My name's Sam Gillespie. I run a blog called the Beau Monde. I have a background in fine jewellery and a love of royalty and history.
So, Sam, before we start, what were your initial thoughts kind of seeing all the jewels in this season of The Crown?
Well, as I think maybe some of our listeners who heard our last podcast might remember, one of my favourite things in the entire world is a tiara. So this season of The Crown, unlike other seasons, I'm afraid to say, was that I think they did a fantastic job on the replicas of the royal jewels.
Oh, I agree. I think it was much better than the last few seasons, though now that I've seen kind of some flashback images, there have been some tiaras which have appeared from previous seasons as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, I suppose all the hard work that goes into making those replicas, it's good job to recycle them.
Oh yeah, but definitely this season had a lot more jewels and tiaras than previous seasons have.
Definitely. And they were a lot more accurate this season.
Oh yeah. And especially recreating specific outfits, which they've kind of shied away from doing in the past.
So I think in episode 1 we have the Gillies ball, which was probably the main episode to feature the royal jewels and the replicas.
Oh yeah, I think one of the things we talked about last time was that the Crown, this season, the Crown really borrowed a lot from the 1992 documentary Elizabeth R, which showed kind of some insight, rare kind of insight into events that are not usually seen by the public, including the Gillies Ball, where, as we see, Imelda Staunton playing the Queen is wearing a replica of the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, along with one of her Saudi necklaces and a bow brooch and diamond earrings.
Yes, so I believe she's wearing the King Faisal diamond necklace, which was a gift from the ruler of Saudi Arabia. And that necklace was actually one that was lent to Diana on her first tour of Australia. So there's that little tie-in with the previous seasons as well. I don't actually think they featured that one I think it was more
I don't
about,
believe so.
yeah, but
No.
they should have done. They've got it there.
Yeah. They have a
Um,
replica made now. So.
they do, yeah.
And it's a pretty
Um,
good one, actually.
it's a really good replica. The tiara it's a bit hit and miss, but it's better than
Yeah.
some of the other replicas that I've seen. And
Oh, definitely.
like you were saying, it's pretty spot on from the images of the Queen at the Gillies Ball to what Imelda Staunton was wearing. It's like for like.
Oh, yeah. And the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara is the most kind of iconic tiara of the Queen whole lifetime. And it was one of the pieces that I saw at Buckingham Palace a few months ago, where I was kind of surprised to see kind of how densely packed it was, because it seems quite light and airy, but it's a lot of diamonds and they're very they packed it up in a very kind of attractive design.
Yes, yeah. I believe we were saying in the last episode, it will be interesting to see who wears that one next because it was such an iconic piece of the Queen. I mean, obviously, for those who aren't aware, the portrait of the Queen that did feature on our banknotes and our stamps was a portrait of her wearing this particular tiara.
Yeah, so it really will live on in history long after the Queen.
Mm.
And another kind of lady who was featured wearing a tiara was the Queen Mother, who wore the Greville tiara along with Queen Alexandra's wedding necklace. And in real life, the Queen Mother wore the Greville pear drop earrings as well as a brooch. But in the crown, she was wearing, I believe, a pair of pearl earrings. And it looks like Queen Alexandra's wedding gift brooch, even though that belonged to the Queen by that time.
Mm. Yeah, no, we did say I like the jewelry on the Queen Mother. As I say, they're very, very good replicas. Not too sure about the actress, and that's just my
I
personal
do agree,
opinion.
yeah.
I just think she was very frail in this series. She's very doesn't really appear to have much of a resemblance to the Queen Mother. Yes, and as we know, the Queen Mother was going until she was 101, so it's a bit of a
Yeah.
strange casting choice. However, again, the jewels are fantastic. We
They
have
really are.
Mrs. Greville's tiara. For those who don't know, Mrs. Greville was a great socialite in the 1930s. She was a great friend of Queen Elizabeth and King George VI, but she had no children. So she left her jewels and to the Queen Mother. One of them was the Greville tiara, which pretty much became her trademark. Wouldn't you say so?
Oh yeah. Definitely. I think in the last kind of 50 years of her life, the Queen Mother only wore the Oriental circlet and then the Greffel tiara.
Yeah, yeah.
And she alternated between those two, even though she had quite a lot more in her collection. And it had become an iconic piece of Queen Mother and also later on the now Queen Camilla.
Yes, yes. So after the Queen Mother did pass away, it's understood that most of her possessions were left to King Charles, and that's why we have seen so many of the Queen Mother's jewels
Yeah.
on Queen Camilla. But the other replica featured here is the Queen Alexandra's Rundle diamond and pearl wedding necklace, which we've also seen on Catherine, the Princess of Wales, at one of the diplomatic receptions. So it's wonderful to
Yeah.
think that jewels that were
No, I
giving.
think that was the Dutch state visit, actually.
Oh, was it? Oh, sorry. You're
Yeah.
you're the expert on those. I just there. But yeah, it's wonderful the fact that this. I mean, when was their wedding? Like 1863 or something?
Three,
Yeah,
yes.
and these I can't believe I remember that date. And these jewels are still being worn. Very much so. But yeah, so again, a lovely replica here.
Lovely replica, and for those who are seeing us on YouTube can see that clip of the Queen Mother dancing a reel. She was at that time 91 years old and she's still as light on her feet as ever.
As ever, very energetic, very sprightly. So like I say, the depiction was very strange in the crown. But hey, I'm not.
Yes, I've seen a frail old lady where
Yeah,
the Queen, she was old, but she was definitely not frail.
no.
And then not too accurate kind of decision was to put the Princess Margaret in a tiara, which actually she did not wear a tiara at the Gillies ball. It was from the 1970s, which was the only other glimpse we've ever gotten at the Gillies ball. Only the Queen and the Queen Mother ever wore tiaras. So, but instead, this time we can see that Princess Margaret wore the Lotus tiara along with her famous kind of ruby and diamond brooch, which I believe was Cartier, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think they went full on artistic license with this particular depiction of Margaret at the Gillies ball, at least. Yeah, like you say, the Lotus tiara, it was, I'd say, stylistically accurate, but perhaps not
Yeah.
proportionally accurate.
Yes, that was my kind of thought as well. It was a bit too big. It might be the actress, but like if those who can see on our in the video on YouTube is that the tiara itself is quite delicate and has smaller elements than that was reproduced for this show.
Yeah. And again, like you say, she didn't. I've seen the clip from the Gillies ball, and yeah, she didn't wear a tiara to that ball. Yeah, her brooch perhaps. Yeah, but again, this is as they keep constantly reminding us, this is a work of fiction. So
Yes. But in general, good attention paid to
mm,
the tiara, at least,
very
even
good.
though the choice was not accurate. At the same time, other royal ladies, including the depiction of Princess Diana, Princess Anne, and Sarah, the Duchess of York, they were not seen wearing tiaras until at the end of that sequence, when it's shown that the younger royals are drunkenly kind of going around the gardens of Balmoral, and we see the Princess of Wales and Duchess of York, and Sarah suddenly has the Greville tiara on her head.
Yeah, that was, I mean, again, like just because we love our history and we love our tiaras, I think that was one of the first things me and you went, why is she wearing the Greville tiara?
Yeah, and it was a very strange decision because if you see this scene of her walking up to that area, she had no tiara on, but in the next shot, she had the
She
tiara on. And I think what they were stylistically trying to do was that they were so drunk that they took the Queen Mother's tiara and decided to play around with it.
possibly, I mean, it
But
did sort of give off
it's
the
a weird decision.
very weird decision, but yeah, maybe that it was again, stylistically, trying to show the folly of youth. These people are so rich, they're so privileged that they can go rolling around the hills of Balmoral drunk, wearing tiaras. But yeah, from a historical point of view, Sarah, Duchess of York, never wore the Greville tiara.
As far as we know.
As far as we know. Maybe she was running around Scotland drunk wearing it, but
I mean, I think right after her wedding, she has a great fascination with Queen Victoria. And soon after her wedding, for her first Braemar Highland Games, the Queen loaned her one of Queen Victoria's diamond bow brooches, which is like one of
oh,
those historic heirlooms of the crown.
oh, really?
Oh yeah. So that was like a kind of a gesture of goodwill for her new daughter-in-law at the time. And finding out those bow brooches were also worn by the Queen when she appeared on the balcony of Buckingham Palace for the last time. So it's like a
Yeah,
link of like this really kind of historic piece, which she loaned to Sarah.
yeah, that's very interesting. But then you go to her own wedding tiara, and it wasn't a family heirloom. So
Oh yeah. Lots of kind of interesting decisions all around.
yes, true.
And
Well,
then yeah, so as we were discussing, like this crown has borrowed from elements we've seen in the 1992 documentary. Another thing that's usually never public is the diplomatic reception at Buckingham Palace, which in 1991 was kind of recorded for that program. And that is one of those things that was shown in the crown. So you can see first off that Queen wearing the coronation necklace and earrings, along with Queen Alexandra's Kokoshnik tiara.
yes, I would say that was probably, again, one of the more very, very accurate depictions in the crown of the jewels that are worn to these events. And they've
Yeah.
also managed to put the family orders, for those watching on YouTube, on her sash. You can see there's a pink ribbon with a portrait of her father, and beneath that there would be a portrait of her grandfather. And these are family orders. They're sort of given to special members in recognition of who they are and their service to the royal family. And they used to be painted on ivory, but now they're painted on, did you say it was
On
glass?
glass, I
On
believe,
glass,
yes.
yes. And they're surmounted with diamonds, which is, as you can see from the images, very sort of lovingly recreated.
Definitely. I think the sash is a bit oddly placed over the necklace in
Yes.
by Netflix, but otherwise attention to detail for the family orders and kind of recreating that whole look was lovely.
Very much.
And we also saw kind of the Princess of Wales in that scene wearing Queen Mary's lover's knot tiara. And in the middle of this, for those watching on YouTube, can see the original clip from 1991, where the gown is kind of a semi-reproduction. Netflix has kind of a cream skirt with a black top where the princess's entire gown was cream. And she also had her iconic sapphire choker, but that which we'll talk about later, but that was not used by Netflix.
No, and Netflix, I'm literally just noticing this now, looking at the picture. Diana is wearing the family order, but pinned to her dress, which
Yeah.
definitely wouldn't have gone down right.
No, it's the placement of it. We can't see in the clip, but generally Diana would have worn the family order, but it's on the crown. It does look quite weird, especially on the bare black dress,
Yeah, very
without any
much so.
necklace or anything else.
But yeah,
And we
I
can
mean,
also get a glimpse of Margaret and the lotus tiara in this scene as well.
yes, but I'm sorry, the main showstopper of this scene was the well, you call it Queen Mary's lovers, not tiara. I call it the Cambridge lovers, not tiara, which is correct going forward.
Yes, technically as well, unless you talk about the original Cambridge lovers, not tiara, which is belongs to the German noble family.
It does. Okay. Queen Mary's lovers, not tiara, as seen here. Quite, I mean, the replica itself is very good. I must say, they've got
It
the
is very good.
hanging pearls correct. They've got the detailing correct. The only thing that
And it's better than the replica they used in previous seasons. I think they used it in the first season and in the second season. And it was
yeah,
quite wider and placed out and more boxy, whereas this is like a pretty good replica. And the
yeah.
placement is a bit odd though.
Well,
It's
that's it. The only drawback from this particular uh what's the word, the appearance of this tiara is the fact that she's wearing it very low down on her head, almost like a bandeau, which is a sort of a style that was popular in the 1920s, where it would go across the forehead, suited the flapper style of the time. But obviously, this is supposed to be the 1990s, and I've never seen her wear that tiara that low.
Yes, I think what kind of Netflix was trying to do was portray her as very naive and kind of innocent and young, whereas by the 1990s, she had been a working royal and a member of the royal family for over a decade.
Yeah,
And she was much more put together than this look shows.
yeah. I'm wondering if they, were trying to highlight Diana's famous, staring upwards. You know how the people have described it as she would look through her lashes at you. So I'm wondering
Yeah,
if it was done to sort of, emphasize the her eyes and where they were looking to in this scene.
definitely that's what it seems like.
Mm.
Like there was a lot of kind of artistic license taken. And speaking of artistic license, there was also the inclusion of three other figures in the diplomatic reception who were not present actually. The Queen Mother, Princess Margaret, and Princess Anne.
Yeah, I think I think I saw the clip of Princess Anne on Netflix. I think one of my first things I said to you was going, "What is that? Is that supposed to be the festoon tiara?" Oh,
It seems to be done by the same person who did the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara. It's too big and too spaced out.
yeah, and yeah, the elements, the festoon elements are just they're a bit off, shall we say?
Yes, but at the same time, they have gotten her orders right. They have the Royal Family Order, and at that time, she only had the Royal Victorian Order.
Ah,
So she didn't get the Order of the Garter until 1994. So you can see those are correct. But the tiara itself, a bit odd.
bit odd indeed.
Whereas, like with Margaret, we've already talked about the Lotus tiara, and it seems they also got her orders correct and paid a lot of attention to that detail and that she wore her Royal Victorian chain in those days. So she only had lots of pins on her left side.
Yeah, yeah. I must say, I don't know too much about royal orders. You're the expert on that, but yeah, if you say they're right, then they're right.
And moving on to kind of a scene in the next episode, which was the iconic revenge dress.
Yes, I think both me and you have written articles about this particular piece of jewelry. I mean, it is iconic, and a lot of people do say, oh, when are we next going to see it? I don't think you're ever going to see this choker while King Charles is alive. It's so synonymous with that event, the revenge dress.
Yeah.
That's which is a shame because apparently it's a
Which is a shame because it's a beautiful piece.
beautiful piece, enormous. But was it a Burmese sapphire or a Ceylon sapphire?
I believe it's Ceylon,
I
and it
think yeah,
was a gift to Diana from the Queen Mother to mark the engagement.
yes, and again, beautiful stone, beautiful piece, surrounded by probably old mine cut diamonds. Features I believe, a 9-strand seed pearl choker. But again, so synonymous with that dress, with that evening when Prince Charles, as he was then, admitted publicly on television to adultery with the now Queen Consort Camilla. I don't think you're ever going to see that piece again. It's just too, yeah, too synonymous.
I would have liked to see, if we were going to see, we would have seen it by now. Though, to be fair, there's a lot of Diana's jewels that have remained unworn. And I mean, even recently this year, we saw some of her sapphire earrings being worn by the Princess of Wales. So there's some possibility that it might make an appearance later on, but it would be quite a bit of a stir. So they'd
It
have to choose that occasion wisely.
very, very wisely. I mean, maybe Princess Charlotte, but we're talking like definitely after Charles
A
and
good 20
Camilla.
years from now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll put that in the calendar. We'll make a note of
Yes.
it.
And then at the same time, the original choker was an iconic piece, but the reproduction they made did not really fall near that mark. I didn't think it was a good reproduction. The sapphire was not big enough. There were less strands of pearls and they were too big. And then at the back, it's a scene showing her tying the clasp, which kind of ruined the entire effect for me and made it look faux and cheap.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to do because it is all about you've got to get the proportions of the jewel right so that it will sit correctly. And like you say, that brooch, the replica brooch, is maybe a little bit too small, and I think the pearls are a little bit too big. For those who don't know, seed pearls are extremely small. They're like pebbles, whereas the ones on the replica are probably trying to be cultured pearls, which are, what you would think of a normal size pearl. And those could be very difficult to hang in a nice sort of straight formation as Diana's are, hence why you might have the gaps on the replica.
Yes. So I think in general, it was a good try, but the earrings as well. Diana's wearing her Collingwood pearl earrings. The one worn in the crown did not bear any resemblance, nor kind of the size of them was off in proportion to the choker. So they did a good effort, but not good enough.
So maybe an 8.5 out of 10 for that.
I mean, I'd give it a 6 compared to the
No,
other jewels.
I'm being generous then.
Yeah. And then there was also a scene in which Princess Margaret meets her former flame, Peter Townsend.
Oh, I did think that was a lovely scene, and especially with Timothy
Which
Dalton.
it was lovely, but unfortunately it was made up because she did not go to that reception, and instead she invited him at her home for tea.
Yeah, I do remember the story of them meeting up in later years, and she said very nicely, oh, he hasn't changed a bit, which was very sweet.
Yes.
But yeah, again, the artistic license in this particular series seems to have gone for it
Yes.
really.
And at the same time, we were so they recreated this iconic kind of pink puffed sleeve gown with again that ruby and diamond brooch. But at this time they had a kind of faux ruby and diamond suite of jewelry rather than the diamond riviere and ruby and diamond earrings Princess Margaret would have usually wore with that outfit.
It's very 80s, that suite of jewelry, the replica suite. Perhaps they were trying to go for her flamboyant style, perhaps, but like you say, where accuracy is concerned, obviously it didn't quite
Yes.
pan out.
Yes, I think you were talking about kind of the creator copied them from contemporary jewel of that time.
Yeah, you can definitely tell that.
Yes, it's not necessarily doesn't really fit Princess Margaret's kind of whole aesthetic, which was usually she wore a big diamond riviere in the evening, and that was her kind of iconic look.
Definitely, she was very imperious, wasn't she? So a nice old school diamond, old cut Riviera. It's exactly what you want.
Exactly. And we move on to kind of some replicas of more modern jewels. So in the past month, I've featured the Queen's 3 tiaras that she added into her collection, the modern sapphire tiara, the Brazilian aquamarines, and the Burmese ruby tiara. And so I saw all these images and I was so surprised to see kind of how good of a replica they did for the Brazilian aquamarines when they're showing the Queen going on a state visit to Russia. And if people are looking on YouTube, you can see the Queen, the crown reproduction on the side and the Queen's original look from the Russian state dinner in the middle.
Yeah, not my favorite tiara. But like we've been saying, that's actually a fantastic replica. They seem to have got, I mean, they don't quite have the height. The central element is more sort of an emerald, well, a very, very large emerald cut aquamarine, and they look to me more square cut. But again,
Yes.
very, very good replica.
So
And
to be fair, I like the replica much more than the height of the original.
yeah, I don't like the original. It's too big. Those
Yeah.
aquamarines are enormous, and they're
The
just
tiara is not good. The suite is all right, but
yeah,
it could use a bit of a remodel.
yeah. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of aquamarines myself, but yeah, each to their own.
It's my favorite stone,
Oh, really?
but I do not like these
No.
aquamarine.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think really good effort, and like we were talking about this before that the Queen made a conscious effort on that state visit not to wear kind of jewels associated with the Romanovs, to wear her modern jewels on that visit was a very diplomatic gesture.
Yeah, and that was one of just my little nitpicky comments about that episode. I did study Russian history, and I do love things sort of all Romanov. And we could put a picture in, but there was a scene where the Queen was at the burial site. Or no, was it the burial site? No, I think it was the war memorial, and she had
Yeah,
on a replica of the sapphire and pearl brooch that would have belonged to the second to last
Dowager.
Dowager Empress of Russia, Maria Fyodorovna. Excuse me, my Russian's a bit
Yes.
rusty. Yeah, no way would she have ever worn that. You know, she
Yeah.
one thing the
Yeah.
Queen was very diplomatic, very polite, and when it came to the Russian state visit, you know, it was so monumental. And obviously what had happened to the Romanovs, the close family ties, the fact that a lot of their jewelry had ended up in the royal collection. You know, she could have easily have worn the Vladimir tiara, or, you know, the sapphire bandeau, or anything like that, but she deliberately chose not to, because she
Yes.
deliberately wanted this trip to be a success.
And she could have even worn the Kokoshnik tiara because of those Russian influences, but she
Mm,
didn't really want to bring up those kind of connotations of the Romanovs, contrary to what they're showing on the crown. But we'll talk about that in the next episode.
we will, yes, and that will be me. I won't stop talking about that.
Yeah. And we also saw another replica, which I think we agree was probably the best one of the whole
Mm,
lot, of the modern Belgian sapphire tiara.
yeah, again, not my favorite tiara, but really good replica. You know, the shape's correct, the hue of the sapphires are correct, the earrings are
The
correct.
sizing is correct. Yeah, I think they did good research on this one.
They did. I think they've even got it, you know, the way it sits in the hair correct.
Yeah. No, I didn't really like, it was until this point where I did not really see Imelda Staunton as like the queen. But at that point, I was like, yes, no, this is instantly recognizable.
Yeah, no, it
Much
was.
more than like with the other tiaras.
Yeah, definitely did a fantastic job on this one.
Yeah. And then also in the background of that scene is one of the queen's ladies in waiting, which we saw a glimpse of the queen's main lady in waiting, Lady Susan Hussey, in that episode. And so you said it looked more like the York tiara, but I kind of saw a resemblance to Lady Susan Hussey's own tiara, which is the Walgrave tiara from her family.
Mm, I'm not sure. We might agree to disagree on this one, just because of the central element. It's you know, the replica looks to have you know, a central element with a prominent point, whereas I can't really see that on Lady Hussey's tiara. Not
Oh
that
yeah,
her tiara is beautiful, looks very Art Nouveau,
definitely.
but
Yeah, no, it's I did a lot of research on that tiara a couple of years ago, and I found a picture of one of her ancestors wearing it at the coronation of King Edward VII in 1902.
oh, oh, okay. So there you go. I can still do the
Which,
dating
I
right.
mean, stylistically, it doesn't really look like that it would fit in that kind of Edwardian style, but I mean, she still wears it to this day.
Yeah, which is, you know, it's a beautiful tiara. But again, the artistic license.
Altra's, yeah, exactly. And then in that episode, we really got a glimpse at Lady Susan Hussey, but they didn't really bring up important parts about her, which was that she was, in addition to being kind of the Queen's lady in waiting, and also the wife of Marmaduke Hussey, who was the BBC chairman at the time, she was also the godmother of Prince William, and she was kind of the person recruited by the Queen to teach Diana about royal life.
That worked out well, didn't it?
Yes, very well. But she's kind of remained close to the Queen her entire life. She was in the Queen's car when she was going to the funeral of the Duke of Edinburgh, and she has also been present during the Queen's funeral celebrations recently. So we can see Lady Susan has played a huge role in the Queen's reign. And it was nice to see her kind of being represented.
Yeah, maybe they should have brought her to the forefront a bit more.
And more interestingly, for those who do watch lots of royal shows, that the actress playing Lady Susan was the same one who plays Camilla in The Windsors.
Which, for just if anyone hasn't watched it, is a spoof. It's a comedy, and it's an outrageous comedy, but very very funny.
Oh yeah, it's hilarious. And some say even better than The Crown.
Do you know what? I would argue. I would argue at least. Yeah.
Yeah, so before we end, I think like overall this season they did a much better effort than in previous ones, and there was a lot of kind of pictorial and visual representation that they could choose from, and they did try their best.
They did. Like I say, I'm more generous than you. I think they did a fantastic job this season. Well, they did a fantastic, in my opinion, they did a fantastic job in season 1 and season 2. I don't know what happened in 3 and 4, but this season they've definitely come back to their best. And yeah, I will be generous. I will give them an 8.5 to 9 out of 10.
And listening to your words, I think I would be a bit more generous than I was previously. I'd give them around 7.5 for kind of getting most stuff right, and just some tiny nitpicky things. Otherwise, great effort on their part.
Exactly.
And I think before we end, we'd like to tell everyone that next week we'll be back with an in-depth discussion on kind of going through each episode of The Crown and talking about the historical relevancy and kind of real historic events that it was inspired by, and giving our review of how the events kind of unfolded.
Yeah, brilliant. I can't wait for that personally.
Yes. So we decided that today was a good opportunity to just focus on the jewels, and then later on we'll be back and discussing, kind of go deeper into the crown and its kind of impact on the royal family to this day. Wonderful. So thank you everyone for joining us for this episode of the Royal Watcher podcast. Sam, where can we find you?
So you can find me on Instagram, thebeuxmonde.inc, the blog, thebeuxmonde.org. I'm trying to get bigger on TikTok, which is just the Beau Monde. But yeah, pretty much go to the blog and you can find all the links.
That sounds wonderful. You can find me at the Royal Watcher as a website, also the Royal Watcher on Twitter and on Instagram. And in addition to everywhere else, please go follow the Royal Watcher podcast page on YouTube. We will have a link in all the podcast streaming platforms and also on the Royal Watcher podcast website. Thank you so much.
Thank you.